awkward and glitchy, but that's okay. Perfection is not our goal. Gathering in sacred community is. And now let's process in together, even as we are separate, with enter, rejoice, and come in. Zoom in. Our chalice lighting words today come from the UUA Leadership Council. With humility and courage born of our history, we are called as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community where all souls are welcome as blessings and the human family lives whole and reconciled. With this vision in our hearts and minds, we light our chalice. Please join me in reciting our affirmational covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. So I'll now pause for a moment for those of you who want to light your own chalices at home. Give you a moment to do that. The topic of today's service is the GA experience. The UUA General Assembly, or GA, which took place last week, is held annually for Unitarian Universalists to gather to learn, worship, and do the business of the association together. 6 of your fellow congregants will share with you today their experiences at this year's GA, which was held completely virtually for the first time because of the COVID-19 pandemic. My own experience was somewhat unique in that I was both a participant and a worship presenter. It kind of brings to mind that old Joni Mitchell song, Both Sides Now, a real blast from my past. I'm a member of the UUA Commission on Appraisal, and our workshop this year was titled Embracing Our Roots, Unlocking the Power of Covenant, in preparation for our report that will be available next June. During the workshop, our definition of covenant was shared, and I quote, "A covenant is a mutual shared promise between individuals or groups to stay in relationship, care about each other, and work together in good faith. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we seek to raise the we above the I, the community above the individual. As seekers, we willingly choose to love each other and stay in relationship over and over, again and again. In this way, we may break promises, but by leaning into the transformational power of our faith, we can begin again in love." At the end of the workshop, my fellow commissioner, Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel, gave everyone a charge to go back to their congregations to take a close look at their covenant to see if it is still the living, working document that it should be. So my opening words today are our own congregational covenant. Please read it along with me. And I forgot to open it, of course. It's coming. Here's our first glitch of the day, folks. I forgot to open it up. It's coming. We, the members of UUFCC, covenant to support and cherish all our members and friends and encourage each other to honor these high standards of relationship. We respect each other's views, backgrounds, and spiritual beliefs. We value a free, open, and mutually respectful exchange of ideas. We hear all voices and encourage thoughtful freedom of expression. We listen to each other without judgment or interruption and speak directly with a person instead of about a person. We will address issues and behaviors rather than people and personalities. We will be considerate but courageous in naming action that diminishes our community. We offer forgiveness and understanding and expect that from each other. In all situations, we strive to respect everyone's dignity and well-being. We trust this covenant will help us work well together to make decisions, solve problems, and express differences of opinion in a considerate, respectful, and genuinely caring way. So it's my hope that we'll take some time, perhaps at a future town hall meeting, to review our covenant to make sure that it's the living document it's supposed to be, and see if it needs to be fine-tuned. And then any changes that we make would be voted on the agenda for our next annual meeting. It's my pleasure next to introduce our music. If you watched the GA Sunday morning worship last week, our music for this morning will be very familiar. It's a song from our own Teal hymnal, We Are, and it was sung by the GA Virtual Choir, joined by Issei Barnwell of Sweet Honey in the Rock, who is also the composer of the song. After several viewings of the video, I was finally able to find our own choir member, Kim Hamill, in the choir mosaic. If you look at the picture really carefully, she's right to the right of Issei Barnwell's, at the upper right corner of Issei Barnwell's picture. I think this song is so beautiful that it bears repeating. Please sit back and enjoy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Benji Messer, music coordinator of this year's General Assembly. In her song, We Are, Dr. Issei Barnwell celebrates the wonder of each life and suggests that even when separated, we are one. I love the lyric, we are the breath of our ancestors. As we sing, you'll see a few personal photos from our singers showing that profound truth. Please join with our virtual choir, led by Dr. Barnwell herself, in singing We Are.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of light, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
I love that song. So during our Zoom services, we've been taking time to spotlight different members of the congregation so that we can continue to get to know one another, even though we're not physically together. So this week, we're spotlighting Catherine Ferry, who is a new member of our board and was one of our delegates to GA. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm very excited to be here this morning. Thank you, Ginger. My full name is Catherine Kriskowski Ferry, and I'm married to Mike Kriskowski, my second marriage. Together, we have 5 children and 4 grandchildren. I was born in Connecticut and raised in Rhode Island as a Roman Catholic, along with my special needs sister in a small fishing village on Narragansett Bay. My favorite pastimes were sailing and ballet. I became a serious classical ballet student and was admitted into Rhode Island Ballet Theater, who had an affiliation with the Boston Ballet. I studied at Smith College in Northampton, Mass, where I continued performing ballet and majored in microbiology and theater ballet. Excuse me. I worked in a local lab while at Smith and continued after I graduated, continuing working in labs. Over the years, I was promoted up the ranks of lab director. I moved throughout the country, sometimes for my husband's job, sometimes for mine, even landing in Honduras, Central America for 2 years, along with our daughter, Marielle. Excuse me. Marielle and I moved from Central America to the Florida Keys in 1998, where I eventually divorced and found solace in sailing. One of my dreams was to own a cruising sailboat, so I purchased Tess, a 30-foot Bristol sloop. I single-handed her sailing up and down both Florida coasts and eventually followed my dream in sailing her to the Bahamas. I was awarded Sailor of the Year, and I only tell you that to encourage other women to follow their own dreams, saying, yes, you can. After my daughter went off to college, I sailed Tess up here to Punta Gorda, where I continued my career as a lab director. My last job was as a laboratory consultant for various hospitals in California until I met my second husband, Mike. We married 3 years ago, sold both our homes, and bought a house together. We started coming to UU about 2 years ago and became members about 1 year ago. My hobbies are trying to keep up with my step-grandchildren, one who thinks she is Princess Elsa of Frozen. I am now on the UUFCC Board of Trustees, which I'm enjoying immensely. I also sail and race my 13-foot sunfish and am an avid reader, animal activist, including following the rescue of Kenya's baby elephants. I traveled to Africa last year to visit the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, who save wounded and abandoned baby elephants. Thank you for listening. I feel privileged to be here. Thanks.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's quite a combination, ballet and biology. I love it. Good to get to know you a little bit, Catherine. We're going to prepare now for our Book of Life segment. In our tradition, we revere the living of our lives as a sacred endeavor, believing that the joys and sorrows we experience hallow the living of our days. We will now pause to give you a chance to share the significant events in your lives. As the music plays, you can use the chat feature to type your joys and sorrows. When the picture of the chalice appears, we will have a minute of silence followed by singing Spirit of Life. Please remember to remain muted and enjoy singing on your own.
And suggest hello.
the most important goals of the world's faith petitions is to bring humanity closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. One of the goals of this fellowship is to encourage all who gather here to grow more and more generous in both spirit and in action. Thank you for continuing to be generous in your giving. There are still bills to be paid, even when we're not meeting in our building. Your gifts can be mailed into the office, or donations can also be made through the Venmo app, which you can download to your phone. So now you have a chance to hear about the GA experience of 5 UUFCCers: Catherine Ferry, Lamar Michelson, Laurie Douglas, Mary Jane Williams, and Laura Anderson. They will be sticking around for a while during the social hour if you have questions or comments to share with them. And now we will begin with Catherine again. Unmute her.
Mute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This was an incredibly exciting experience for me. This was my first time, and I attended as a delegate, which meant I could vote. I was excited at the prospect of learning new things through a few lectures, a few workshops, and take part in worship services, but I had no idea what an eye-opener this would be for me. I thought I would be afraid of sitting in my room for 8 hours or so, getting all cramped up, but in fact, I found myself so focused and interested that I couldn't wait for the next workshop or lecture to begin. I want to tell you about 2 items that really struck me. The first one was on the very first day, Wednesday, during the welcoming celebration. Opening statement by Jessie Little Doe Baird from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, while some of the tribe drummed and danced. I was thrilled to see who they are. Then a native speaker, Reverend Clyde Grubbs, shared what his grandmother used to say: when a relative dies, he has gone to dance with the ancestors. He went on to say, we dance when we are called to worship, we dance to mourn, we dance to celebrate, and we dance when we are sad or glad. Through struggles and victories, we dance. And when words are inadequate, we dance to the power of the Creator and to honor our bodies. I grew up in Rhode Island along the Wampanoag Trail, but was sad to learn that the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe are still struggling to keep their lands that have been theirs for at least 14,000 years, but were taken from them by colonial settlers in the war, where over 40% of the Wampanoag tribal population was killed, and a large number of healthy males sold off as slaves. To this day, they struggle for independence of the lands. In 2007, they had to submit yet another application, this one thousands of pages long, just to be acknowledged what is rightfully theirs, while many of the tribal members continue to struggle through oppression by white privilege. I had tears in my eyes because I grew up there. I had no idea what kind of struggles they were experiencing. I do now, thanks to the UU General Assembly. I listened to workshops, lectures, and voted on items for amendments, worshiped and sang, and all in all, I took advantage of 19 sessions in over 5 days. But the second point I want to make is this. When I joined UU, I thought I was joining a nice little church that was very accepting of many religions. I had no idea how accepting they were until I saw the Zoom presentation of the song, We Are. The song itself was absolutely beautiful. I don't know how many people were on one page, but they were all harmonizing the song We Are, as you just heard. I closed my eyes and just let it wash over me. After a while, I opened my eyes to see who these lovely voices were. Throughout the GA, there were some people who looked like me and others who didn't look like me. There was one with hot pink hair, some had dark skin, some who had light skin, and every skin color in between. One had green hair, tinted hair, and others who were younger and seniors. Another one had purple hair with matching purple accessories, and some without any indication what gender they were. This fantastic group of UU people are the rainbow we call humanity. This is us and how beautiful we are. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Catherine, that was so beautiful. And it was also my first time going to the GA. And in preparation, a while ago, Ginger had said to me, "You won't believe what it's like to be with thousands of UUs." Well, I didn't quite get that experience, and I was dreading it. I was dreading being on the screen and also feeling the loss of what I had been anticipating of coming together. But they did such a phenomenal job, such a beautiful job of using footage that had been videoed ahead of time and some stuff live. It was really impressive. And then a really great thing happened to me. I got a message from Ginger, "Hey, do you want to join Mary, Holly, LP, and I on this chat?" So for the entire attendance of the GA, it was like I was in school passing notes with my girlfriends. And it made all the difference of feeling really participatory, not just right here looking at the screen, but truly engaged. So even though I had said to everybody, "Oh, I'll probably make it once a day," I would see messages coming in on my phone that was like, "Oh, that's amazing. Oh, can you believe she said that?" And I would have to get to my screen to see what I was missing. So I really appreciated finding a way of human contact. And I want to say, if it happens that we're in virtual land still next summer, or if you just choose not to travel, I don't know if I'll ever travel again, to participate in the GA gives you such a sense of being connected to something that is so much bigger, like Catherine just said, so much bigger than our little fellowship. And I found that incredibly inspiring and rich. And then the other thing that really stands out to me is that because of the workshops I chose, and I did not go to one business meeting, I only went to workshops, I was constantly centered on people of color faces. The whole organization was centered on that. A lot of the leadership was there. One of the workshops I went to was just Black women clergy. But they have written a book that will be coming out. It was so beautiful, inspiring to me. I'm really enjoying a different orientation to life than I grew up with, which is to be called a person of not color, so centering people of color. And that stood out a lot for me in this experience. And the ending after the closing service, which I know a lot of you saw, in the afternoon, there were still workshops, and I went to a musical on race, which was came from the friendship of a Black man and white man who've been friends for 30 years. They met going to John Prine, the John Prine stage in New York. And for me, that combination of the arts and addressing racial issues and diversity was as moving as can be. So from dance and music to people's voices, the whole thing was incredible. And I just want to say, if you have you should all have the copy of the UU magazine that came out. I just reread it this morning, the story on the Wampanoag people and how we can still make a difference helping them is very moving. I hope everyone is using that magazine as a way to stay connected to the whole big organization. It is a source of inspiration. Thank you.
You're on, Lori.
Oh, I am. Okay, there we go. Hi. Well, I never thought I would go to a GA and be able to watch a drag show, but that was pretty exciting to me. Not what I'm going to talk about, but it was really exciting and a wonderful way to understand, to really feel the diversity that everybody's talking about. Why do we want diversity and yet we resist it? What stops us and what stops us from being the welcoming fellowship that we really say we want to be? this workshop call to me. And at the end, in my belief, it has an important call to us as a fellowship. I wanted to present some highlights to you in my interpretation of what's your appetites. This will hopefully lead us to a longer discussion at another time. My presenters were Patrice Purse and Keith Crone. Keith shared a model he developed after 20 years working with various UUA workshops and congregations. He showed a model that showed 4 concentric circles with a black hole in the center. These circles are a diagram which represent a typical UU congregation in different places in regards to change and diversity. They start with an outer ring, which are people who would like to remain the same and unconsciously don't really want to change. They don't want new people and they don't want to do the work. They want the congregation as it is, the one that they've come to love, or the one that we've come to love. They are likely to exercise power and privilege so that things don't change, and that's not always consciously. The next ring in this circle is everyone is welcome, as long as you are like us. Assimilate, adopt our model of being. See this often. We see this often around race, gender identity, how people appear, how they act, how they respond to each other. Those of us that are in that third circle tend to remind others, sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly, remind others if they are not exactly like us. Sometimes we don't even know we're doing that. For instance, we can send out a group invitation to an event that has a pricey entrance fee, or it has lots of steps with no other entrances to get in. Or the event happens late at night when some can't drive, see well enough to drive, or have younger kids. The presenters thought that actually most people fall into this third ring. The ring number 2, we're getting smaller in there, all are welcome, and others can be themselves as long as I don't have to change. My group of people are in control. Circle number 1, new people can affect change, the whole system change, and all people will be affected, and that's okay, and I feel good about it. The group in the very center, or the black hole right in the middle of all these circles, these are the folks that are adamant about change. It has to happen now, and they can be kind of preachy. They don't really want to talk, and these people unintentionally often block change. Not the way they want it, but sometimes they have trouble letting others have conversations happen. Then the presenters went on to say that often change happens in small movements, something like a pearl on a string. So change is more likely to happen with these concentric circles when people talk to the people who are closest to them in the circles, not from the inside all the way to the outside. For instance, if I don't really want to change, even though it's unconscious, it's unlikely that I will listen to somebody who's preaching about wanting to change right now. So it's something to think about in terms of who we are and how we tackle these things. I can be very glad, in fact, to welcome those who look differently than I do or move differently than I do. But perhaps I may not realize or may not want to look at myself feeling more hesitant in welcoming people of a younger age, or maybe with different mental capacities or with less education. We need to know ourselves. Unconscious bias can be changed. We can challenge ourselves. In fact, we do that all the time around here at UUFCC. And that's the gift. At the end of the workshop, they posed 2 questions to us, which I will now pose to you. And I'll give folks a little bit of time to think about this. When in our fellowship, where in our fellowship do you find hope? Secondly, where in our fellowship do you want to see or experience more hope? This brought to mind many things for me, but right now I will invite you to join with me in the next couple weeks. I'm going to do a Zoom discussion about your thoughts in answer to these 2 questions and how you think this model may or may not help us in our process to become radically inclusive. Thank you very much. It was a great experience.
I assume you can all hear me. Last year, Paula Jones introduced the concept of our congregations being a community of communities at the FOS lecture. I spent a lot of time this year thinking about this concept, and I was very pleased to be able to attend a much deeper, in-depth workshop on the idea. The concept is basically double-edged. It refers to the way we think of ourselves and also how we present ourselves outside of UUFCC to the rest of the community. If we don't think of ourselves this way as a community of communities, all of our attempts to be seen as welcoming and inclusive, beloved community fail. The community of communities idea is a move from seeing ourselves and portraying ourselves as a family towards relating to others and each other as a congregation of community of communities, sorry. Family is kind of a sacred idea, but when you really think about it as a descriptor for UUFCC, it can certainly be problematic. Not everyone had an Ozzie and Harriet Saturday Evening Post sort of family. The term family can be patriarchal, suppressive, supremacist, and an exclusive entity. If UUFCC is a family, it's likely that you have to leave pieces of yourself at the door in order to fit in. Labeling ourselves a family means we all belong to one idea. In actuality, we all belong to many things, and those things make up our community. And these things we all belong to don't remain static. They change constantly with new people and experiences, changes in personal and societal circumstances, and everything else that allow us, or in some cases force us, to change. The idea of community of communities seems unbelievably simplistic on the surface, but if you think about it for a while, you may realize the profound ramifications that it can have. Think about all of the communities that we have right now at UUFCC, like the choir, the committees, personal friendships, etc. And then you expand your thinking to include all the communities that each and every one of those overlaps with, like families, organizations, neighborhoods, political affiliations, and special interest groups. The presenter used an example of a Venn diagram, and it took me a minute to remember what a Venn diagram was, so I made one for you all. Remember these? Where you have the big circle, and then you have all the little intersecting circles. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about that whole big picture. If we see ourselves as a community of communities, there are many more doorways for people to enter. This idea should be familiar to anyone who read the UU World article last year on the coffee hour, and we had a discussion here at UUFCC on it. The idea was people come in our doors for many reasons outside of Sunday worship. So think of every one of those reasons as a community. Yes, a conversation among friends community, from which sprang a secular community, a grounds community, an auction and party community, and a humanist community. All of these examples include individuals who are not necessarily Sunday morning worship people and may never walk into our building, but they are still a community with us. The idea is to think of the communities outside of our formally identified committee structure and a separate individual identity. Think of the individual as a community. The community of communities concept is an attempt to move away from individualism towards a collective, more inclusive attitude. It is a move away from seeing an individual as an exception to our perceived community. It's an opportunity to change outcomes because you're looking at the bigger picture. It's a move away from exceptionalism and a move towards full inclusivity for all. It's a way of looking at things in a mission-based way instead of an individual personality-based system. One idea that I pulled from another workshop was just kind of grabbed me. And it was the idea of, instead of being impartial, let's be multi-partial. Thank you.
Good morning. I love General Assembly. I love being with Unitarian Universalists. I love the Unitarian Universalist Association. The first GA that I went to was in 2009 in Salt Lake City, where I am right now. I don't know how many UUs came to Utah for this gathering, but I was very happy to welcome so many UUs in my home state. My family is small. I have 3 siblings and 2 children. Our family gatherings max out at about a dozen people. So when I was in that place, I felt safe. I felt like I belonged. I had the feeling when I looked around that I just knew I belonged there. I had never been with so many people in one room together that were part of my community, my church community. This year was the 4th GA that I'd participated in. It's hard for me to know what the best thing is about GA. We've heard lots of great from Catherine, Samara, and Lori. Ginger and Mary Jane are often applying what they get from GA here at our UUFCC. I always leave GA with my head buzzing full of ideas. Some of them are half-baked. It takes me a time or two to understand something that's new. Some ideas I've heard of for many years and I get it. Sometimes I'm comfortable, sometimes I'm uncomfortable. This year I volunteered to do tech support. I spent about 20 hours in 4 days online, and my learning began actually before GA began. I was invited to join a pre-GA training around anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism to help better equip me and other volunteers to do our GA assignments. Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson and Reverend Evan Carville-Zemer worked together to create a good workshop which helped to remind all of us volunteers on ways to do our job respectfully in a way that wouldn't at least make GA attendees feel uncomfortable, and at best would make them welcome and feel like they belonged. In this workshop, we talked about assumptions about people based on preconceptions and about microaggression. I asked a question, something like, I'm not the most sensitive person. I've spent my career in technology. And sometimes I say something that might be interpreted as a microaggression. And sometimes I don't even know something that is interpreted as a microaggression. And it's not what I meant. And so how do I avoid this? Reverend Carville-Zemer answered me, and my head started buzzing with clarity. They said it wasn't necessarily me, but the situation was causing them trauma. Maybe I look like their mother. Maybe the interaction reminds them of a previous interaction with someone else, and that made them feel bad. Whatever it is makes them feel like they aren't safe or they aren't seen as who they are. And what do we do when we're attacked? We either leave or we defend ourselves. And it's a lot easier to leave. It's a lot easier to feel like this is just one more place where we don't feel like we belong. Now, I'm not sure I can make the same connection for you here this morning that I made in my head last week, but it goes something like this. Often in life, we have choices that are binary. Yes, no, cisgender, transgender, stay, leave, male, female, don't do it, do it. But usually, if you think about it, answers in life aren't or shouldn't be binary. The answer shouldn't be yes or no, but maybe. Or better, let's see how we can figure out together how to answer that. And this conversation about microaggression isn't about me. It's about how we look at each other as people with worth and dignity. This sounds a little like I'm blaming the victim, and I'm not trying to pile on more guilt or more responsibility for anyone else. I'm trying to say that I need to make sure that we feel loved and accepted in order to have a solid relationship. So when we have a conversation, it feels safe. Does that make sense? Maybe? That said, I really don't know how to do it exactly, but I do know that's what we need to do. I have a question for you. Are you going to GA next year? It's scheduled to be in Minneapolis, but it might also be streamed because that was pretty good this year. The answer isn't yes or no. The answer is, let's see how we can do this together. I love being here in Zoom land. I love being with you. I love the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County.
Thank you all for sharing your GA experience. Hopefully you've inspired some other people to check out GA in the future. Actually, it's taking place in Milwaukee next year. If it takes place in a physical space, we'll see what happens. It's subject to change. A highlight of GA for me was a report from the Commission on Institutional Change. This commission was charged 3 years ago with the task of taking a close look at the UUA to find ways to dismantle white supremacy in its midst. They have given periodic reports over the 3 years and presented their final report at GA. A copy of their report, titled Widening the Circle of Concern, will be sent to each congregation, and it's also available from the UUA bookstore and in PDF form to download. So for my closing words, I have chosen an excerpt from an essay included in the report by one of the commissioners. The title of the essay is The Joy in the Spiritual Work, and it was written by Mary Byron. Keeping quiet, doing nothing isn't an option for me in a faith that proclaims we respect the inherent worth and dignity of all people. There is no dignity in economic, housing, justice, immigration, environmental, and education systems that create such inequitable outcomes. White people built these, and white people are required to dismantle these unjust, inequitable, and cruel systems to completely transform them. I knew I couldn't do this transformational work unless I was willing to get uncomfortable, to start by acknowledging my role in our systems and the ways I participate in upholding our dominant white culture. Conflict avoidance, assuming that good intentions are enough, denial, tokenism, white savior behavior. It is hard to see these things in myself, but I need to see it and change it in order to live into the principles I believe. This is a part of my spiritual practice. I practice humility and forgiveness for myself and my community as a spiritual work when we engage in dismantling white supremacist systems. I recognize I am going to make mistakes, and I also know how I will acknowledge them and try to repair the harms. I try not to let the fear stop me and to stay curious about when and where my discomfort arises. Every time I make a new discovery about my thinking that releases limiting thoughts and behaviors, I feel more free. And that is also spiritual work. And now we extinguish the chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May those ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again. So now I'm going to share the life of the community. On Thursday, we had a wonderful celebration of Dennis Shaw's years of service to UUFCC as board president. The garden in front of the building has been dedicated as the Dennis Shaw Rainbow Garden, and we surprised him with a parade of about 30 cars driving by during his regular Thursday grounds work. If I can. Here it is. Thank you again, Dennis, for all that you have done and continue to do for UUFCC. We're still looking for more volunteers to be Zoom director. A big thank you to Linda for her debut today. Let's give her a round of applause. I'm sure that she'll be glad to tell you how much fun it is. Our benediction today is by the Reverend Darcy Roque. who is a Unitarian Universalist minister who supports our association's stewardship work through our UUA Society for Stewardship. There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in this world to not find the balance every day. There's too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day. And as Rev Dan always says, be a blessing to everyone you meet. May it be so. You may now unmute yourself and let the social hour commence. The presenters will be around for a while if you have questions or comments for them.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. Let us